Hello, everyone. My name is Margot Buckles. I'm a volunteer with the Washington State Beekeepers Association, and I'm one of the presenters for Ask a Washington Beekeeper. This evening, we have WASBA President Alan Woods, who is also the owner of Woods Bees, or Bee Company, over in Centralia. And he's going to be talking to you about how to prep your hives for winter. It's kind of like the Game of Thrones, winter is coming, which you actually should be thinking about as early as probably June, but Alan will get into it. So if you'd like to ask a question, please put it into the chat and we will pose it to Alan at an appropriate time. Also, before we get going, I just want to do a quick plug for the WASBA annual conference, which is the first weekend in October, and you can purchase a ticket at wasba.org. It will be in Linwood, Washington, and we have a great lineup of speakers. So without any further ado, Alan, do you want to start talking to people about prepping for winter?
Yeah, thank you, Margot. And again, I'm Alan Woods, president of Washington State Beekeeping Association. And this is probably one of the most important but most asked about topics in beekeeping that comes my way. And I really enjoy it because it is so fulfilling to see your bees make it through winter because you prepared properly. So we understand and we teach this at WASPA that there are four reasons why your bees do not make it through winter, right? Not enough bees, unhealthy bees, starvation, and moisture, poor ventilation. So if you can master um, those topics, then you'll definitely help your bees uh, make it through the winter. So why are these four topics so important? Why are these four tasks so important, right? So each step, right? Each step um, is like 25%, right? If you have enough bees, there's a 25% chance that your bees are going to make it. If you have feed on there, there's another 25%. And if they're properly ventilated, and there's another 25%, with the exception of healthy bees. If your bees are unhealthy, it knocks that down to 50%. So if you have unhealthy bees, but you've mastered the other three, there's a 50% chance that your bees will make it. However, if you have unhealthy bees and just one other, like not enough bees or not enough food or moisture, there's 100% chance that your bees will not make it. So it's important to understand and learn each of these four steps. Um, so by now, you guys should have already uh, weighed your hive to ensure that your hive weighs at least 100 to 120 pounds. And if not, you should have started putting feed on your hive, right? And it's important to do this because the bees need uh, the nectar and the honey to get them through winter, because what they do is they cluster and they shiver, they shake their bodies, and they need these resources in order to make it through winter. And that is why it is important that you have enough bees, right? That's the most important thing. So I always tell people um, we have been starting too late to prepare for winter. And if you've ever been to one of my classes before, the first question I ask is, when do the bees start preparing for winter? And normally they're going to say, you know, I'm not sure when they start gathering honey, and I'll tell you no, in the spring, right? The bees work, the bees work for something that they'll never see, but they're working for the next generation, and they continue to work and continue to work. If you can keep your bees healthy, right, and keep them fed, right, in the springtime, then you should have enough bees when you get um, to the winter, when you get to fall, right? But I would also say that I've also heard that you should stop feeding pollen in August and September. But I would tell you, you should feed pollen as long as you can. And actually, toward the end of the year, you should feed a little heavy, so that you can encourage the queen to start laying and your bees are healthy. All right. So it's essential that you have enough bees. Um, so during this time, it may be a little too late to start feeding and trying to get your numbers up. So you might need to start assessing your colony strength and start determining if you need to combine your hives, because that may be your only option. And I would tell you, combining two hives is better than letting combining two hives and having one hive is better than letting two weak hives go through winter. So this is a time you really need to start looking at combining your hives. So you want to do it earlier than later, right? You don't want to wait till it's too cold and start trying to, you know, get your hives to work together. You want to do it now so that you can actually check on them before the winter get we get too far along in the winter. And another thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we can identify our weak bees, the weak hives, and try to find out why they're weak and if we can do anything for the bees. And this is why it is important that we're able to manage and check on um, unhealthy bees. Again, this right here it significantly decreases your colony's chances of making it through the winter. And even if they do make it through the winter unhealthy, a lot of them will not make it out of the spring. So it is critical that when your bees go into the fall, this time of the year, your bees are healthy, right? And we know that where do they get, how do bees get sick? It's not like they get the flu or colds or anything like that, but they normally get it through viruses from mite. Um, they can get it from pesticides or anything that weakens your colony. So you need to be prepared to monitor your hive, monitor your mite load, treat if necessary. Like I said, you probably should have treated already. But I would tell you this, if you have not treated already, I would tell you, test your mites. And if you have a high count, you're better off to treat than not. So just go ahead and treat, right? Uh, and again, when you treat, it's important to understand how to treat, right? If you're using oxalic acid, right? And sometimes, I've read on the box that says use it once every every 7 days. Well, oxalic acid, right, loses its potency after 3 days. So we do it um, once every 3 days for 5 times. So the vaporizer that we use takes less than 30 seconds, so it's easier for us. But if you only have two hives, again, it's only 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes per hive, and you're done. But at least you have a peace of mind knowing that your mite counts are going to be low. So it's important that you test for mites and then that you also treat if necessary. And then another thing I want to talk about that we've kind of pushed to the back burner is tracheal mites. Tracheal mites. We have tracheal mites in this area, right? So we really have to be proactive when we're dealing with tracheal mites. So how do we deal with tracheal mites, right? We use Pro Health from Manlick, and I'm not throwing this a pitch for this, but it has thymol in it, right? The right amount. So what we do, like most people will put it in the bees feeder and stuff like that. I don't do that. What I'll do is I have a 2-gallon pump. I'll mix sugar water and then I'll put the right amount into that gallon, and then I'll pump it and I will spray my bees, right? And also I tell the beekeepers that we talk to here, you can get sugar water in here and put 2 teaspoons of this in here and do the same thing with your bees. Shake it up really good and you spread on your bees. The reason you don't want to let this sit in your hive is because what's going to happen is the medicine is going to start going down. So when you spray your bees with sugar water, the first thing they start doing is eating it off of each other. So they're taking in uh, this thymol and it's going to kill. Make sure that you don't have tracheal mites. Not saying that every hive will have it. It's a preventive. It is the cheap preventive, uh, to be honest with you. For the amount that you use and as long as it lasts, it's about maybe, 45 to 50 cents a use, per hive. So it's not a bad deal, and you only do it one time, right? You just do it one time, and once you knock the tracheal mites off, you knock them out, right? And then we know nosema. We're gonna, you have to deal with nosema. But then again, I really want you to think about nutritional health. I think that's one of the things that we lack when we talk about nutrition and nutritional health. Um, Probiotics, amino acids. A lot of people think that it's just like witchcraft or fooey or whatever. But I would tell you that the bees need 10 essential amino acids to stay healthy, right? So if you can get a probiotic or um, a pollen patty that has actual pollen in it, and you just feed the bees, that is going to really help the bees stay strong. And then also your pollen content. Remember, right? I've seen people feed sugar, right? Inverted sugar is always better, right? Inverted sugar is really just liquefying the sugar, right? So that the bees don't have to work hard to break the sugar down, right? And I've seen people use regular sugar, but inverted sugar is really good. So you can, and the way you do it is you just get your water. You use hot tap water. You don't boil the water. A lot of people boil the water. Just use hot tap water and mix the pound ratio to sugar. So we're talking in the fall, we're talking 2 to 1. So if I was to make a gallon of water, that's 8 pounds, and I would use 16 pounds of sugar, right? And then I would just heat it up. I would get the water hot. I wouldn't heat it up. I'm sorry. I'd get the hot water out of the faucet, pour the sugar in there, and I would just stir it until it dissipates. It's clear. Then you can feed it to your bees, right? And you can add stuff like Hive Alive. And again, I'm not promoting any of these things, but there's added benefits in using these things. There's added benefits in using fondant, strong microbial, Hive Alive fondant. They have nutrients in them that the bees can use to help strengthen them and to clean out their guts before they go into winter. Now, here's the thing. The bees that are consuming this right away are going to be your regular worker bees. Your queen is going to start generating your your winter bees. So this is when you prepare like fondant or whatever later to put on your hive to ensure that the bees have enough resources and nutrition throughout the winter.
Alan,
Yes.
we have a question that goes back to the tracheal mites, actually a
Okay.
couple of them. First of all, when do you do the tracheal mite treatment? And the second question is, when you're doing the spraying, do you pull the frames out to spray them, or do you just spray on the top bars of the hives?
No, you don't pull the frames out. You just leave the frames right in there, and you spray in between you spray them really, really good. You just get it really wet, which means you will want to do it when the temperature it's at least 65 to 70 degrees. You don't want to do it below that, right? And the bees will immediately consume that sugar water. Another thing,
When do,
another
when
thing.
do you do, when
Go
do
ahead.
you
I'm
do the
sorry.
treatment?
So I normally, like, we're doing a treatment now. After this is, like I was telling you, we're doing it right now because we know the temperature is about to start dropping. Yesterday was 88 degrees. It was 70 something today. We know it's getting ready to start dropping. It's just a one day treatment. Actually, it's less than that because if you go back in an hour, most of it is gone. It's consumed. So I would start doing it now sooner than later, and it's definitely going to make a difference in your hive. It's just a preventative. That's one less thing you have to worry about affecting your colony. So yes, spray the whole frames, just spray them really, really good. And I would start doing it. I always tell people between the 1st and the middle of September, the beginning of September and the middle of September. I, so it's important that we get this right, because if we can supplement the digestive health of our bees, we've just added that much more of a chance of them making it. Another problem that we have that affects the health of the bees that I don't think we really think about is yellow jackets, right? If you have a yellow jacket problem, you're going to have struggling bees. I went and helped a guy I checked his hives out and we treated because he hadn't treated yet. Uh, and there was one hive that was really weak, and I was like, and he said, I don't understand what's wrong with this hive. And I said, I do. Look at all the yellow jackets you have. The yellow jackets were really they were just causing chaos on this hive. So he had another hive that was really, really aggressive and really, really full. So I took half of the bees from there and put them in the top of his other hive. So they'll come down and they'll keep those yellow jackets at bay. But until then, I told him you need to start treating your yellow jackets. So I'm gonna show you how we treat our yellow jackets. I'll normally put these uh, in front of the house, not just right in front, but a little ways from the hive. And I'll put them about 1 inch off the ground. I don't put them in trees. I put it 1 inch off the ground because yellow jackets travel the ground and they will fill this bag up. They will fill this bag up. But if you ever come out here, if you ever come to Woods Bee Company, you're going to see these everywhere, right? It has a screen on it so that my cats can't get in. And what this is, we make a flippanol mixture. So we use this stinky chicken from Costco. And if you like this, I apologize. But it is good for yellow jackets. So we'll take this and I'll chop it up really good. And I'll put it inside of this cup, a Dixie cup. And then I'll take a second Dixie cup, right? And a cotton ball, and I'll put a yellow jacket attractant, and you can get this at your box store, Home Depot or Lowe's. And I'll put a few drops of that on here, and I'll stick it inside of this cup, and I'll stick holes in it with my knife. Then I'll take this cup and stick it here, right? This thing is stuck in the ground. We have them everywhere, so we just take the back off, and we slide the cup in, and we just put the back on, and the yellow jackets come in. They take this chicken with the I forgot to tell you, I put the flippanol on here, and what we use is Pet Armor. It's the cheapest, and get the big dog, right? And I put 7 drops per each cup. And the yellow jackets, they just fly in here because this stuff really smells. And the yellow jacket attractant, it helps. So they'll fly in here as quickly as they possibly can. They'll take as much as this food out and they'll take it back to their nest. They'll feed the young and it'll eventually kill the nest. So this is what we use in order to manage our yellow jacket problem. So if you come out here, you'll see a bunch of yellow jackets by the nest, but they're dead. They're so weak when they come back that our bees literally kill them. So you'll see a bunch of dead yellow jackets. And that could be the case. And then sometimes I walk around with this too. So it could be salt poisoning because we take care of yellow jackets with these too. But the flippanol, it works great. These traps are really good to see how well your flippanol is working. Because the first week you put them out here, this bag is going to fill up quick. And it's going to keep filling up. Then when your flippanol start working, you're going to start seeing less and less yellow jackets in your bag. So you know that you're working and you know that you're winning the battle. However, if you have an orchard or a garden, you want to keep your honeybees away from it because the yellow jackets do serve a purpose. They kill aphids and other bugs that will destroy your garden. So you want to keep them separated because you need the yellow jackets in that area to take care of the aphids and whatever else is killing your garden. Or else if you have daddy praying mantis, if you go buy them, that'll work too. But you need to just be careful that you don't outbattle the yellow jackets and create another problem for yourself. But the yellow jackets are definitely a health issue for the honeybees. So that's just another way. And this is the primary way that we take care of them here. And it works very, very well. And then the third reason that bees don't make it is starvation, right? They don't have enough food. They don't have enough food or resources to take them through the winter. What do they use the resources for? They use the resources to shiver. right? So what they do is they cluster. When they cluster, they make a mantle, right? The outside is called a mantle, and the bees are just like an insulated blanket. They just sit there. And the only reason they come in is not because they get cold, but because they're hungry and they need more food. But you have inside of the mantle, you have the core. The core is just a bunch of bees that are generating heat. They're shaking to keep the inside of the hive warm. So it's important that you have enough resources, because if the hive is not warm enough, and you can have honey in the last two frames on each side, and if it's too cold and the bees can't generate enough warmth for the area, they're just going to stick their heads inside the cell and they're just going to be done. Right. So another thing you need to do is make sure that you have all your honey frames moved toward the center of your hive. Right. And what we normally do is we go through the hives all throughout the year, and as they're making honey, even in back when we were doing the nectar flow, we'd always move our honey frames to the top, just move them to the top. So we kept the bees at the bottom. So when the winter came and they move up, they have all their resources there. Right. So um, just remember, you want your hive to weigh between 100 and 120 pounds when you go into winter, right? Depending on how many bees you have and what type of bees you have. If you have Italian bees, they tend to grow longer, so they're going to take more resources. So you may end up having to feed the bees a little bit more in the winter. So what should I do to get my hive ready for the winter? You should probably start feeding a liquid, a 2-to-1 compound, until it gets too cold. Once it hits 60 degrees, I always say 60 degrees, daytime, nighttime temperature, you want to just take it off. It's just too cold. You want to take it off. And you can start using fondant or something else, but you definitely, so your advantage now is while you have this heat, um, try to use as much sugar feeding as you possibly can. Um, and remember, when the temperature drops to 60 degrees, then you want to stop feeding liquid. You want to take it off. The same thing with pollen patties. You feed pollen patties now. Feed pollen patties. Once the temperature starts dropping and you notice that the bees are no longer coming out of the hive, you want to remove that pollen patty out, because if they can't get out, then they'll start defecating inside the hive, and then the hive will get sick. So you want to make sure that you take care of that. Then that leads us to moisture, right? This is the final thing um, that we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about a few other things, but we're going to talk about moisture. What happens is when the outside temperature gets a certain temperature, while the inside is warm, on the inside of the hive, moisture is going to form and it's going to drop on the bees. If a bee gets wet, they're pretty much dead. They cannot keep the hive warm, right? So there's a few things that you can do to create proper ventilation in your hive. The first thing I want to show you though is a slatted rack. Some of you guys, this thing is not just great in the winter, but in the summer, because this is what people use in the summer. You put it right on top of your bottom board, and the bees go in. So it kind of replicates, like if you've ever been to the airport and it's 100 degrees outside, and if you go underground in a car garage and it's cooler down there, it's kind of like that. So the bees don't bear it as much with this. But also in the wintertime, it does two things for you. It keeps the circulation moving in the hive, so the hive doesn't stovepipe. And it also allows you to be able to reach underneath and pull out all the dead bees, which is another reason that people's hive die, because we don't go out on a regular basis and ensure that the entrance is not clogged. So it does two purposes. And then one thing you'll notice that a lot of people have, this is the hive IQ. We'll talk about this in a minute, but let's just talk about the wood hives. Is the quilt box, right? The quilt box. So this quilt box, right? If you see this one, it has holes in the screen so nothing can get in. And you put cedar chips inside of this bag and you put it down in underneath like this. And what happened is, and you're gonna notice in the winter, it's gonna start, you're gonna see mold on top of this, and that's fine. So what this replicates is your attic in your house. On your house, you have little holes on each side. So inside of the house, you want your attic to stay cool so that the temperature on your attic does not, it's not so warm and the outside is so cold that it creates moisture on the inside. So you got to, it's properly ventilated. So each house, and they have, different things to ensure that the heat is transferred properly. Well, this does the same thing, right? Because you want to make sure that the inside of this box is cool, so you don't get a lot of moisture. You will get moisture, but you won't get as much as you would if you didn't have this, right? And so the way this works is it has a screen, so you can take this off. You can take it off, um, I'm sorry, you can take the bag out and you can look in and you can see what's going on with your bees without breaking this off and creating another problem. So you can see where your bees are feeding, you can see if they need resources. And if they do, you can drop resources right in the screen. So this thing is really nice. And another thing that people always ask me is about wraps, right? Wraps. I always tell them, if you're going to get a wrap, just get something cheap, right? Are wraps really necessary? I would say on this side of the mountain, not so much. On the other side, maybe. But the only benefit that wraps provide, I think, it keeps beekeepers out of the hive, right? Because every February, March, it gets really, really warm, and everyone wants to go in and do a full check, hive inspection. And I tell you, don't do that because it's going to get cold again, and your bees are going to die. So people who have this on, they'll call me and ask me, "Hey, can I check my bees?" I said, "Well, I wouldn't do that. Well, I got a wrap on it. Well, just leave the wrap on it. I tell you when to take it off, right?" So, and that helps. If you have a hive IQ, if you have a hive IQ. The hive IQ is a whole different animal. You remember I was telling you the four things that kills your hive. The hive IQ, here's the thing, the hive IQ takes three of those things away. The only thing it doesn't do is healthy bees. That's still your responsibility. The hive IQ is self-ventilated, so it takes away any need for a quart box or anything else. However, we do put bee bunkers in here so that when it's sitting on the top box, we can lift it up and slide feed in there because there's no other way you can do it. So we just use this just so that we can put fondant in, or when we treat, I even use this when we treat. Or you can just take it out altogether if you want, but it's good in the wintertime. But the hive IQ is self-ventilating, so it takes away the moisture part, right? The hive IQ is well insulated, so you don't need a lot of resources for the bees, so the chances of them starving is not that great, right? And because of the warmth of the hive, the queen lays longer and she keeps making more bees, so you're going to have enough bees. In fact, when we go out and clean our hive IQs, we have to be careful because we actually pull bees out, right? They literally push the dead out. But we try to get them out, but there's so many. There'll just be so many bees in there that they'll be pushing them. We'll be pulling the actual bees out. So, and normally we split our hive IQs around April because they're so packed. So this takes away three elements of beekeeping, but you still have to make sure everything that we said about the yellow jackets, protein, the health of the bees is still detrimental. You still have to follow that. You still have to keep your bees healthy. If you have a regular wooden hive, there's a few other things that you have to do rather than just putting on your quote box and stuff like that. You want to make sure that your hive is tilt slightly forward, not a lot, just a little bit, so that if you don't have a screen bottom, you don't want water to wake back in your hive. So you want to lean it this way. If you have problems with mice, and you probably want to do it anyway, you want to put a mouse guard on it to keep mice out because mice will go in and they will try to seek a warm place. One thing I've noticed about the Hive IQ is there's so many bees in there that if a mouse go in, he's going to come out super fast. So I have yet to see a problem in that element. You also want to make sure that you do not have any supers on your hive. You want to make sure you have 2 boxes, right? At a minimum, 2 boxes. I've seen people winter with a single one, but they put it like in a refrigerator or something. But you want to make sure that you have at least 2 boxes. And the reason you don't want extra boxes on there is because the bees have to generate heat to keep those extra boxes warm. So if you have a wooden hive, you're really going to be really pushing it. Also, you want to make sure that you do not have your queen excluder on at all. Because if you have it on and the bees move up and they leave the queen down, then your hive is not going to make it. Mouse guard, slatted rack if needed, wrap the hive if you want to. Strap your hive down. Strap your hive down. You can have strong winds. We had a couple of years ago, and I have a picture, but I'm not going to show it to you. I have it, it's on one of my other classes. We had a tree come down on our hives, but because we had them strapped down, they didn't even move. And I'm not talking about a branch, I'm talking about a tree that came down on one of our hives. And so because we had so many hives together, it just like they broke the fall. The first hive took the brunt of it, and the rest of it was just holding it up. So strap your hives down, right? Again, ensure that you go out at least weekly, walk in front of your hive and make sure that the bees can get out, right? Get a clothes hanger, a stick, or something with a hook, and just reach in there and pull out the dead bees, right? You might have to do that until at least January, until your actual worker bees are all died out. Okay, so you may have to do it until then, but you just keep doing it because normally those are the bees that die and they block the entrance for your winter bees. They need to get out every occasionally, especially when if it's a warmer day, they want to get out, use the bathroom, and go back in because the whole time they're just holding it. Again, why is it important that you guys perform and understand each of these tasks? It's important because, again, by performing each one of these tasks, it greatly increases the chances of your bees making it, right? And I'm telling you, there's no better feeling than to have your bees make it, right? So here's the thing. Here's the kicker in all of this. You have to get your bees to the fall, but they go into winter on their own, right? And how they come out of winter is a determination of how well you prepared them for the winter, right? I'm not trying to put a guilt trip on you, but if you guys have 2 hives, 3 hives, 4 hives, just put the extra effort, the extra time into properly preparing these hives, and they should come out all right. We normally do 200 hives. And I know you're probably saying, yeah, but you cheat. You send your bees to California in the winter in December, and we do. That's where they spend Christmas vacation. But it's still a hard job just to keep them healthy enough to get them to that point. So the only thing we don't do, we do pretty much everything that you do, with the exception of we don't feed heavily um, much late in the year. We feed heavily early to keep the bees strong. And then after that, we stop because when they get to California, we want most of the food to be gone already so that the queen can have more spaces to lay. So that's probably the only difference where you have to really feed your bees to get them all the way through the winter. Now, one thing I want you to understand is that there are such thing as a winter bee and a worker bee, right? So a winter bee and a worker bee they're different bees, right? And although they do the same functions, they do it in a different way. So a winter bee has a high level of intelligellum, which is where all the protein is stored, how they feed the bees, where everything is. They have a high level and they keep it longer. So as a worker bee, starts doing different tasks. She starts being a guard bee or forager. Her level of intelligellum starts going down till she has none. But the worker bees, their vitellogellum is large, right? And they have a large amount so that they can last at least 4 months, right? A worker bee only lasts for about 45 days. So I say this because think about what I'm just saying. A large amount of vitellogellum. And some people say bee fat or whatever. But if your winter bees are not healthy, they're not going to make it. So we need to really start considering this and contemplating this, not waiting until September, late September, October, until winter hit to put your bees to bed. But you need to start thinking about as early as July, testing for mites, right? Pulling your honey, seeing your bee count. Are they going down? Managing your hives correctly, right? So that starts a lot earlier, and then it's easier for you when it gets to the fall, right? And again, all of these methods that we use, they're successful for us. You need to make sure that you find methods that are successful for you. We have different microclimates in Washington State, so everything may not work for you as they do for us. But the things that I told you today, treating for tracheal mites, regular mites, feeding, ventilation, those apply across the board for everyone. Enough bees, that applies to everyone, right? So it does not matter. It does not matter where you are. Those things apply to you as well as every other beekeeper around, right? So let's think about bee health. So are there any questions?
Yeah, we have one that asks, what kind of, what is your hive setup? Inner feeder, quilt box, telescoping lid, foam insulation, and the questioner wants to know what area your hives are located in.
So I'm in Centralia. So I'm about 20 miles south of Olympia. We use wooden boxes, and we have about 50 hive IQs. We send all of our wooden boxes to California. So our hives are made a little differently than the standard hive, right? Where you have one hive, a bottom board, you can have a screen bottom board, a telescopic top, and an inner cover. We don't do that. We have a pallet. We have 4 hives on each pallet. We have migrant covers. I put plastic over mine. Some people ask why, but I just put plastic over mine, just to make sure that if that generates moisture underneath so the bees can drink and it keeps rain out. I also put a strip of aluminum. It's not aluminum, a strip of, it looks like aluminum, but it's an insulated strip of, I should have brought some in, and I put those on top of every one of my hives. And what it does, it keeps the heat in and the cold out, and it keeps the bees cool in the wintertime. So it helps out. And what was, did I miss something on on the question? What else did they ask?
No, I think that was about it. I just kind of want to weigh in because we have tried a bunch of different things. We're on the west side. We don't have a commercial operation. We have a hobbyist/club operation. And basically we use a open bottom board, a screen bottom board, 2 deeps. And basically we have a shim that's usually a super, and that's where we put our fondant slash hard feed, and then we cover it. And last year we did try insulating the hives because we watched Scott Debnan's talk about how the dew point is different when the hives are insulated versus if they're just left out there, just the wooden boxes. And I don't know if that really had any effect or not. What we did see though is that our insulated hive IQ did survive the winter. And our Apimaye hive, which is also insulated, it didn't survive the winter, but I think it was more beekeeper error than bee error because it had a pretty large population in it when we opened it up.
So they kind of like clogged the entrance of the hive.
They did.
Yeah, and that's why it's important that we remember that to go and check for that.
Another question is, what is the best reducer to use over the winter and at what temps to reduce minor white opener at 80 degrees?
Well, again, that's going to determine on where you are in your microclimate, what's going on there. Because, like, to me, do I really recommend using a reducer? If it's windy in an area, yeah, I would probably use it to cut it down a little bit. If it's not, do you have a lot of mice? Do you have rodents? Then you probably want to use um, a mouse guard. See, to answer that question, it would have to be based on knowing the area that you're in, right? So do we don't use mouse guards here because we don't have a big mouse problem because our bees are in the middle of the field, and we have cats that catch everything from squirrels to eagles. You didn't hear that, but so yeah, we just leave them in the field. So it depends on where your situation. Um, I would depending on where you are and how many hives you have, or if you have a yellow jacket problem, I would do anything from just your standard reducer to robin screen, right? It just depends on what your situation is.
So I'm going to weigh in on this one as well. We tried putting screen on to keep mice out the first winter that we had bees, and what we found is that it was an impediment to us clearing out the entrance of dead bees, and so the inconvenience outweighed the issue of mice. In fact, we've never had a mouse in the hive. And so we never use a winter reducer. However, I probably reduce the hive entrance starting in late June because we do have a lot of yellow jackets over here. And so we have a reducer on from probably late June through the time that we have the first frost and the yellow jackets aren't flying anymore.
Okay. Yeah, and that's perfect. And most people probably do the same thing that you do, again, depending if they have a lot of mice, then it would be a difference. So yeah. So you have any other questions?
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Any other comments? Ellen, would you like to weigh in?
Sure, I can do that. I'm over here on the east side of the state as well. And we definitely have the drought situation where we may start feeding liquid feed earlier just because there is not the nectar in the flowers. And that weighing of the hive so that you can, without peeking in and disturbing and pulling frames, you can actually see when your nectar flow is on, when it plateaus, and when they start drinking up their resources is really something that we find helpful over here, strictly because of not being able to reliably depend on how much nectar our plants have.
And Ellen, that's a good point because that goes back to, that we may need to start monitoring our hive weights throughout the year so that we can get an accurate account of what's actually happening. in our hives, when the flow starts, when it ends. Do we need to start feeding? Those are going to help you make intelligent decisions about what the bees need. So that's about a very good point.
So we have one more comment. Doug Page says, I've got so many bees in my hive IQ that I'm worried about swarming if I remove the third deep. Every day I have massive orientation flights. Is my concern founded?
So I would say yes and no. So the reason I say yes and no is because the hive IQ is fairly new. But we haven't had a lot of fall swarming. But I will tell you that Victor, they actually split their hive IQs in the fall, and they allow their bees to go through winter, and they make more, so they don't have to split in the spring. So that could be a determination because the bees, it doesn't take much bees. We put a nuke, a 5-frame nuke in a few hive IQs last year, and they came out as strong as you would not believe. So if you had a hive, 20 frames and you split them, you wouldn't have a problem getting your bees through the winter. So
Terrific.
yeah, the hive IQ is a different. It's something totally different. And I'm telling you, I don't have all the answers. I'm learning. I'm talking back and forth to Victor in Australia, Xavier, his son, and we're trying to get, hey, this is happening. Is this normal? And we're really trying to get the gist of what's going on. We in our hive IQs, we have so many bees. Again, it's crazy. I mean, it's nuts, But I will tell you though, if you have a hive IQ and you want more honey next year, get a 9-frame spacer, cut one of the clips off, sit the spacer inside of the hive IQ, put 2 frames on the outside to hold it in space, and you will get more honey because the bees you'll have more space between your frames and they'll build more honey. So that's one trick I know works well.
Okay, we have a couple of more questions. When to put aluminum on top to start insulating, and do you use wood chips to curb moisture?
Well, again, we don't because we use the the insulation, and we normally put that on as soon as it get cold. We don't put it on. Well, actually, to be honest with you, we leave that on now. We put if we have a quilt box, we put a quilt box on, or if we put this on, we wait till it get cold. Right? We wait until it gets cold. And what do I mean by cold? When we have like continual days of 60 degrees, then we'll start putting it on. Because what's going to happen is you're going to see the bees start flying less and less. And as far as the wooden hives, we just put the insulation on because we don't have inner covers. But the inner covers do a good job of insulation as long as it's protected through moisture, as long as there's not a lot of moisture in there.
So we have another question. How often do you do OAV in winter?
So once a month.
And do you do what you described, the every few days over the course
No,
of
no,
okay.
just once a month. Just once a month, one treatment a month, and that's it. So I start doing that for a habit, and I start getting people in the habit of doing that because then at least I know they have to clean their hives out then. But the once a month it works really well because the queen is not laying as much because resources aren't coming in. So your mites should be controlled already. So you're just keeping it down. So everyone that I know, we do once a month. Another thing that we do, um, and it's totally up to you, is we use the extended release. We put those on. We haven't put them on yet, but we put those on at the end of September. And
Oh,
they're good
really?
for 50 days, but we just leave them on. We put them on and we leave them on the whole winter.
Oh, huh. I've taken, I mean, I have those on in the summertime, but I take them off in the wintertime. I hadn't thought about putting them on in the winter.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
doesn't
know.
hurt. It really doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. Um, so I have a question for you since you rep Hive IQ. It's styrofoam, so how do you do OAV with Hive IQ?
So if you look at the way the Hive IQ is made with the if you look at the way the Hive IQ is made, it has like 4 legs on it. You stick it underneath it, and the
Oh,
whole plate is open. The whole bottom of it's open, and it vents up. And it vents up better than a normal hive because remember, it's self-insulating, so it literally sucks it up in there. And then when it's inside, it just keeps like circling it.
mm,
So you can use it that if you have those are for the ones who have the plate, just put it at the bottom. We have a one that has a tube. So we get a silicone tube on there and we just stick the silicone in there and we just shoot it that way. So it depends on what type of vaporizer you have.
mhm,
But because we don't have that, we have pallets, we stick it through the front with the little tube. And
mm.
the tube doesn't get hot. It's silicone and it just pours out all of the acrylic acid.
What would be the last time to open, check the hive before winter and to make 2 deep boxes? Now we have 3 deeps.
How many bees do the question I would ask you is how many bees do you have in that third deep? And this is the reason I'm asking this question. If you do a thorough check through that hive, you're going to notice that some frames are not being used, right? So you go through there and you take the frames that are filled the most, the ones that the bees are using, and those are the ones you leave in. Just because they have 3 boxes does not mean that whole hive is being used, especially this time of the year. So I would not wait too much longer to do this if you had to. Now I'm gonna tell you, I have wintered hives with 3 boxes. And I did it. I did one just last year because everyone is saying, because that's my thing. I always say use 2 boxes. So someone asked me, can you do 3 boxes? I did 3 boxes and the bees came through just fine. But this is my concern. I fed that hive, and I didn't send it to California, but I fed it the whole winter, and I'm gonna tell you why. There were so many bees in there, I was worried about them consuming the resources and starving. So you can do that, but you need to make sure you're checking your bees.
And if I could interject something, Alan, we, just because we're getting older, my husband and I had used 8 frames instead of 10, and we use westerns instead of deeps. And so in our case, we frequently use 3 boxes because of the space issue. And so far it's working out okay for us over here in Eastern Washington. So I sort of look at it as, how many frames, how much space, and what's your weight. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just going by the number of boxes, it's the size of those boxes.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, Ellen. And also, like, do you have a bunch of frames in there, like at the bottom box, that are not being used? If you don't need them, don't just cut your
Yeah,
house down a little bit.
yeah, definitely do that because they don't need that space if they're not using it.
Right.
You definitely don't want to have space in the middle that doesn't have resources in it because that's where they're going to be coming up and they
Yeah.
need to be able to reach those resources without too much effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all of this is critical and it doesn't, it's not a lot, it's not hard. It's just preparing so that the bees don't have to work hard when they get there. You know. You have any other questions?
Well, the one other thing, Alan, and you touched on it briefly at the beginning, keeping the bees healthy is really important. And I was surprised we learned about what the symptoms of nosema are. And I didn't expect to have a nosema issue in any of my hives, and we went to a special course at WSU, did testing, and we had a nosema issue, which was a shock. So talk again about preventative nosema, even when there's not signs of it in your hive.
Yeah, so there is, but there used to be a nosema treatment that was really, really well. That was really, really good.
In Washington. So I sort of look at it as, how many frames.
Whoops, sorry.
No, it's okay. But there used to be a nosema treatment that was really, really good. It was called Fumidel. Now there's a Fumidel B. Fumidel B used to be there. Now it's I don't use it, but what we've learned is that if you feed your bees and you keep them in a dry place, that the chances of them getting nosema is really slim, and you keep your hive well ventilated. It's the same thing with any brood disease. If you have a brood disease, the first thing you need to do is make sure that your hive is ventilated, the air is going through, and that you feed your bees, right? Feeding bees, it's kind of like people, right? When we get sick, they give you soup and stuff. They give you heavy stuff you eat so that you can make your body well. So the bees are the same way, but nosema is a little tricky, but it doesn't have to kill your hive, right? Again, you watch what you put in your hive, take out any pollen patties out when the bees can't fly. All of that stuff causes issues. It causes issues. Change your frames out, right? How often should you change your frames out? We change our frames out once every fourth year. We change our frames out. And I know it says like the third. It's after the third. It's a fourth for us, and the reason we do the fourth is because we only use deeps, and the first year we use brand new frames for honey, and that's it. So next year we give those frames to the bees there, and the only thing they've had in them was honey. So we just get an extra year out of our hives. But changing your frames out is so critical too, to keep your hives healthy. And then like a nosema, again, it's one of those things that you can feed the bees. Um, and again, like Hive Alive, they claim, and I'm not sure, I don't know if there's any tests, but that their winter fondant helps prevent that. But I don't know.
So one of the questions on the, was that, the person thinks that they're gonna have to requeen, and they wanna know if there's something that, they need to give their, bees to, to the queen to make sure that she remains healthy if they requeen now.
So again, there's pretty much nothing you can do at this point but feed until you can. The good thing about requeening this late in the year is the bees normally accept the queen a lot easier. When they know they can't make their own, they'll accept the queen a lot easier. But there's really nothing you can do that you shouldn't have already been doing, is making sure that your bees are healthy. So again, probiotics, pollen. I feed pollen to the last minute if I was you. Um, and then again, sugar water. Make sure that your hive has enough nectar to get them through the winter. If not, be prepared to use sugar, patties or pollen or whatever, not pollen, fondant or whatever, but you'll need to use some type of resource to help your bees get through winter.
I did have another question, which, I know that you're not like promoting anything, but what is your preferred pollen, patty or pollen, food that you provide for your bees?
So to me it depends. I'm gonna, I'll get it from Man Lake or I'll get it from other sources that has a high. Again, we make sure that they have a high amount of actual pollen in the pollen patty. It's not a pollen supplement. It's supplement, but it has actual pollen in it. So that's what we look for. You can buy a pollen substitute. You can mix it and make it yourself. and that's fine. But we always use the one that's high in pollen. Like this one right here. This one has 6% pollen patty, and it has bioactivate in it. So it has the Apis biologic activator in it. So it's gonna keep the bees going a little better. So, and that's just, you know, preference. It costs a little bit more, but again, you don't take this whole pollen patty and throw it on there. We cut it into strips, and we put a strip on there, and we keep it on there till the bees keep consuming it. And I've learned that because the first the first few years we were keeping bees, when it started getting cold and the bees weren't flying, we were scraping all of this pollen off of the hive. So I realized that it's just as easy just to cut a nice strip, leave it on there. When they consume it, take the neck, you know, put another piece on there. And then when you get down to the end, you're not wasting anything. So it has pollen. You just make sure it has real pollen in it, right? So, but the Man Lake, they make a Ultra B pollen patties with a bioactive activator, and it has 6% pollen. Now, when you're dealing with pollen, you don't want a pollen patty that's really high, like super high in protein, because you want the protein to come from the actual pollen and not so much the pollen patty itself.
Well, I don't see any more questions from the audience. It's been a good presentation about getting ready for winter. Thank you so much, Alan, for taking the time to share your tips and tricks with us. And
You're welcome.
again, this is Ask a Washington Beekeeper. I want to put in a plug for next month, October, on the third Thursday of the month at 6:30. Molly Quade from WSU is going to be talking about her research related to fungi and varroa mite, how she's looking at fungi to combat varroa. And also, please consider joining us at the Washington State Beekeepers Conference. It is the first weekend in October, and you can purchase a ticket at WASBA.org. We've got a lot of great speakers. There's a honey tasting. There's the opportunity to meet with various beekeepers from throughout the state, and also an opportunity to support bee research in Washington. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you.
Good night.
Yep, good night.